He had never paid much attention to her. She came every day to clean his house, moving quietly, methodically, leaving everything spotless, like a ghost passing through. He was used to his routines, buried in work and endless calls, rarely noticing anything outside his own world. She was 27, quiet, composed, and yet there was something in her eyes, a trace of sadness, of a story untold, that occasionally made him pause and wonder. It was just an ordinary morning when everything changed. The phone rang on her table, an unfamiliar Arabic number flashing on the screen. She glanced at it nervously, then answered, her voice soft but tense. He didn't mean to eavesdrop, but something about the way she spoke, a mixture of urgency and fear, pulled him in. He couldn't understand the words, yet he could feel the meaning behind them. Each syllable seemed to carry weight, as though her world had just shifted. He tried to focus on the cleaning she was doing, but the sound of her voice caught him. There was a sharpness in her tone, a tremor barely noticeable, and then she paused. He noticed her hand trembling slightly as she held the phone. His curiosity and concern overpowered his sense of propriety. He leaned just slightly, careful not to be obvious, and then he heard it. Something that made his blood run cold. She spoke of a man, someone dangerous, someone looking for her. There were words like, safe, leave, quick, and the urgency was unmistakable. His first thought was to call the police, but he hesitated. Something told him that this was not ordinary. She ended the call quickly, putting the phone down with a sigh that was almost inaudible, but it carried the weight of months, perhaps years, of fear. She looked at him, her eyes wide, searching, as if trying to gauge whether he had noticed. He swallowed hard and shook his head subtly, giving her a small, reassuring smile. She nodded faintly, but the tension in her shoulders remained. He realized that this woman, who had appeared so simple and quiet, was hiding something far bigger than a simple cleaning job. Over the next few days, he found himself watching her closely, noticing the little things he had ignored before. The way she checked doors twice before leaving, the way she flinched at sudden knocks, and the careful way she handled her phone. He wanted to ask, to know, but he feared intruding. Yet every instinct in him told him he had to. One evening, he stayed late in the office, pretending to work, just to see her finish her shift. She lingered by the door, hesitating, as if waiting for something, or someone. He stepped out quietly and called her name. She froze, then looked at him with an expression that was hard to read. Finally, she came over, hesitantly, and he asked softly, "Is everything okay?" Her lips parted, but no words came. The silence stretched for a moment that felt like eternity. Then, in a low voice, almost a whisper, she said, "I can't tell you everything." Not yet. Her eyes pleaded, and he could see the weight of secrecy pressing down on her. He nodded, deciding to trust her, even though the curiosity burned inside him. The next day, the pattern continued. He began leaving small things for her, tea, a snack, a note saying, "You're safe here." He didn't know if it would comfort her or scare her further, but he felt compelled to do something. She accepted them quietly, sometimes offering a small, fleeting smile that lit up her otherwise guarded face. It was during these brief moments that he realized he was drawn to her. Not just curiosity or concern, but something deeper, something he couldn't yet name. Then came the night that changed everything. The phone rang again, the same Arabic number. She froze, glancing at it with fear, and this time, he couldn't stop himself. He stepped closer, and she finally allowed him to see the screen. Before she could answer, he said, "Maybe I can help." "Let me." Her eyes widened in shock. For a moment, he thought she might refuse, but then she nodded, handing the phone to him. The voice on the other end was harsh, urgent, demanding to know her location. He realized immediately that this was not a joke. Without thinking, he grabbed his coat, motioned for her to follow, and they left the house. They drove in silence, the city lights streaking past. He could feel her trembling beside him, and he tried to offer comfort, but words felt inadequate. Finally, she spoke, haltingly, in broken English mixed with Arabic, they're looking for me. I didn't want trouble." Her voice broke, and he instinctively took her hand, squeezing it gently. They arrived at a small, dimly lit safe house he had remembered from a news story, a place meant for people in danger. She looked at him, tears welling, and whispered, "I was never supposed to let anyone know." He shook his head, disbelief and concern mingling in his expression. "You don't have to explain everything right now. Just know you're safe." Her relief was palpable, but the fear lingered like a shadow. That night, as they sat in the quiet, she finally began to tell him pieces of her story. She had come from a small town in the Middle East, fleeing threats from powerful people who had controlled her family and her life. She had changed her name, moved to the city, and taken this cleaning job to stay hidden. Her life had been a careful balancing act, avoiding attention, pretending to be ordinary, while always looking over her shoulder. He listened, stunned, realizing that the simple woman he had barely noticed was in fact a survivor of unimaginable circumstances. Her resilience, her quiet strength, and the grace with which she had carried her burden made him respect her deeply, and something more began to stir within him, an admiration that was turning into a profound affection. Days turned into weeks, and he continued to help her, making sure she felt secure, taking precautions to ensure no one could find her. They grew closer, bound by trust and the shared secret of danger. He learned her laughter, her favorite songs, her little habits, and in return, she let herself lean on him, allowing the walls she had built around herself to crumble slowly. Then one evening, as they reviewed documents and notes related to her past, her phone rang again. This time, she answered calmly. The person on the other end was confused, perhaps realizing that she was no longer vulnerable. She ended the call, a small smile playing on her lips. Turning to him, she said, "I think, maybe it's finally over." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No matter what happens, I'm here," he said softly. She looked at him, her eyes glistening with gratitude and something more, something that mirrored the feelings he had been harboring for weeks. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to hope, not just for safety, but for a life where she could trust someone, where she could belong without fear. And he realized that the quiet woman he had hired to clean his house had completely changed his world. She was no longer invisible, she had become the center of his thoughts, his care, his heart. Months passed, and with every day, the danger receded, leaving behind the chance for something real. They shared meals, stories, and laughter, and the bond between them deepened into a love that neither had expected. What had started as a simple employer-employee relationship had transformed into a partnership forged in the fires of adversity and trust. One afternoon, as they sat on the balcony watching the city, she turned to him and said softly, "I never thought I could have a life like this, free and normal." He took her hand, holding it tightly, and replied, "You deserve this and so much more. You've shown me courage, strength, and kindness I didn't know existed." She smiled, leaning against him, and in that moment, all the fear, all the secrets, seemed to melt away. He realized that life had a way of revealing the extraordinary in the most unexpected people, and sometimes, a simple decision, like hiring someone to clean your house, could change everything forever. They had found safety, yes, but more importantly, they had found each other. And that, he thought, was a secret far more powerful than any danger that had once threatened them. She had entrusted him with her life, and he had discovered a love that he would never take for granted. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, they sat together in silence, the world outside moving on obliviously. Inside, there was peace, there was hope, and there was an unspoken promise that no matter what challenges came next, they would face them together. The ordinary had turned into extraordinary, and the secret that had once seemed so terrifying had brought them to the beginning of a life neither of them could have imagined. And in that quiet, shared moment, he realized that sometimes the most unexpected connections are the ones that change your life forever.